In the expansive reaches of the Andromeda Galaxy, amid swirling nebulae and sparkling star clusters, stood the Galactic Federation's most esteemed military academy. For millennia, it had been the ultimate proving ground for the finest warriors from across the cosmos. Its hallowed halls had borne witness to the rise of legendary commanders, the forging of unbreakable alliances, and the creation of strategies that had shaped the very foundations of intergalactic politics. But today was unlike any other. The Academy's ancient walls seemed to hum with a peculiar energy, a mix of excitement and unease. For the first time in its 10,000-year history, a group of Terrans had been invited to participate in the Federation's renowned interspecies combat simulation. Admiral Zorax, a towering insectoid with shimmering wings and mandibles that clicked as he spoke, stood before the assembly of alien generals and dignitaries. His usual calm blue exoskeleton now pulsed with shades of green and purple, an unmistakable sign of his discomfort for those who could interpret Zentan body language. "Honored colleagues," he began, his antennae twitching with barely concealed disdain. "Today we stand at the crossroads of a decision that could shape the future of our galaxy. We bear witness to what can only be described as a calculated risk." He paused, letting his multifaceted eyes scan the room. The inclusion of these Terrans has sparked much debate. Some argue their infamous resilience and adaptability could be valuable assets. Others, he clicked his mandibles with emphasis, fear that we may be inviting chaos into the order we have worked so hard to establish. A murmur ran through the crowd, a mixture of clicks, whistles, and guttural growls, sound that would have been indecipherable to any human ears. They had all heard the stories, tales of Terran tenacity, their planet's perilous environments, and their ability to not only survive but thrive in conditions that would reduce most species to mere piles of quivering primordial goo. "Surely," chirped Virexia, an Elris representative from the sign system, her feathers puffing up in amusement. "These tales are nothing more than exaggerated myths. How impressive can a species be when their very home planet seems bent on wiping them out at every turn?" Laughter echoed through the chamber, a sound that would have made any Terran in earshot freeze with terror. Admiral Zorax raised a limb for silence. His mandibles twitched, possibly in what could be interpreted as a smile if insects could smile. "Your skepticism is duly noted, Ambassador Kailis," he buzzed, "and it's exactly why today's exercise will be so revealing." Turning his attention to a massive holographic display on the wall, Admiral Zorax made a sweeping motion with his appendage, and the screen flickered to life, revealing a breathtakingly detailed landscape, rolling hills, dense forests, and hidden enemy bases. "The scenario," the Admiral continued, his tone dripping with satisfaction, "is a simulation based on a 5-year guerrilla warfare campaign. The participants must infiltrate enemy lines, build a resistance network, and methodically dismantle the opposing forces' infrastructure." He paused dramatically, his compound eyes gleaming. "The current record for completion stands at 4 years, 3 months, and 17 days, set by none other than our esteemed colleague Lord Drakkar of the Drakthar Collective." The entire room turned to look at the massive reptilian figure standing in the corner. His scales glistened with pride at the mention of his achievement. Lord Drakkar nodded slightly, his head massive compared to the others, his forked tongue darting out as if tasting the air. "It was a most invigorating challenge," he rumbled, his voice a deep, gravelly sound. "I am eager to see how these soft-skinned mammals fare." At that precise moment, the doors to the simulation chamber slid open with a hiss, revealing a small group of 5 Terran cadets. They strolled in with an almost casual indifference, a demeanor that made several alien spectators shift uncomfortably in their seats. Leading the group was Jackson Williams, a burly Russian whose beard could make a Wookiee envious. He cracked his knuckles, each pop resonating through the now silent room. "Well," he drawled with his thick Siberian accent, "this looks like the party, da? I hope you've got enough vodka for everyone." Behind him were the Yan twins, Olivia and Emily, Chinese martial arts prodigies whose synchronized movements made them appear as one entity, rather than 2 separate individuals. They bowed deeply in perfect unison, their faces a mix of respect and barely contained enthusiasm. Honorable beings of the galaxy, they spoke in eerie harmony. We are honored to demonstrate the art of kicking ass and taking names, the noble traditions of Earth's martial disciplines. Trailing behind was Marcus Bennett, an Egyptian demolitions expert. His fingers drummed an intricate rhythm on his thigh, an involuntary tick that had once caused an alien instructor to evacuate an entire star system, mistakenly believing Marcus was activating a doomsday device. I do hope, he said, his smile just a little too wide, this simulation is fireproof. And lastly, there was Riley Patterson, an Irish hacker with fiery red hair that matched the mischievous gleam in her emerald eyes. She winked at the group of aliens, causing several of them to faint, and one particularly sensitive Trivon to spontaneously molt. "Top of the morning to you, lads," she chirped, her thick brogue almost palpable. "Now, which one of you fine folk will show me where you keep the good stuff? And by good stuff, I mean your most classified top-secret computer systems, purely for academic purposes, of course." Admiral Zorax's mandibles twitched again, his exoskeleton flashing a dangerous shade of purple. "Terrans," he buzzed, attempting to regain control of the situation. "You have been briefed. On the parameters of this exercise, you are tasked with infiltrating enemy territory, establishing a resistance network, and systematically dismantling the opposing force's infrastructure. This scenario typically takes years to complete." Yeah, Riley interrupted, twirling a lock of her hair around her finger. "Guerrilla warfare, resistance networks, blah, 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 we got it, bug boy. Can we get started already? I've got a date with a pint of Guinness in She glanced at an imaginary watch. "Oh, let's say 30 minutes. The alien dignitaries collectively gasped in shock. Audacity, disrespect, the sheer humanity of it all. Admiral Zorax's exoskeleton now pulsed in a riot of colors, vibrant enough to rival a disco ball. "Very well," he hissed, each word dripping with barely contained fury. "Your hubris will be your downfall. Begin the simulation." With a flash of light and a disorienting hum, the 5 Terran cadets found themselves transported into the eerily realistic holographic environment they had seen moments before. Rolling hills, covered in thick vegetation, stretched as far as the eye could see, with occasional plumes of smoke rising from concealed enemy camps. Jackson took a deep breath, his nostrils flaring. "Ah," he sighed, clearly satisfied. "Smells like home. Well, what home smelled like before we accidentally set fire to the vodka distillery during the blizzard of '43. Good times, good times." Olivia and Emily exchanged knowing glances. "You think this is bad?" Olivia chuckled. "Try growing up in Beijing during the Great Smog Crisis of '35, Emily finished. "This air's practically mountain fresh in comparison." Meanwhile, Marcus had already pulled out an array of gadgets that looked far too advanced for a simulation. "What?" he said defensively, noticing his teammates' raised eyebrows. "I just brought a few party favors, to liven things up. Nothing says surprise resistance movement like a few well-placed firecrackers. Am I right?" Riley cracked her knuckles and pulled out a datapad that definitely wasn't standard issue. "All right, lads and lasses," she grinned, her fingers flying across the screen. "Let's show these Elras how we do things on good old terra firma. First things first, who wants to bet I can hack their entire communications network before Jackson finishes his first battle cry?" Back in the observation room, the alien generals watched with a mix of fascination and growing unease as the Terrans sprang into action. Their movements were nothing like the carefully coordinated, tactically sound maneuvers typically seen in such exercises. Instead, it resembled chaos, glorious, terrifying chaos. Jackson charged straight into the nearest enemy camp, his battle cry a mix of colorful Russian expletives and what sounded suspiciously like the chorus of Rasputin. The simulated adversaries, who were programmed to expect stealth and subterfuge, were caught entirely off guard by the Terran bulldozer barreling through their defenses. "Come on, my little matryoshka dolls," Jackson bellowed, swinging a makeshift club, likely a former tree. "Let's dance the dance of my people. It's called You Fall Down, I Keep Standing." With each swing, holographic enemies flew through the air, their pixelated bodies dissolving in showers of light. Meanwhile, Olivia and Emily scaled a nearby cliff using nothing but their bare hands. and what appeared to be sheer force of will, reaching a vantage point. They moved in perfect synchronization, taking out enemy snipers with throws that defied both gravity and common sense. "Ha! Remember when Master Chen said we'd never amount to anything?" Olivia called out, launching a rock with pinpoint accuracy to take out a sniper nest. "Yeah, he said we were too undisciplined," Emily finished, clotheslining two enemies while performing a backflip. "Wonder what he'd think now." "Probably that we're still not living up to our full potential," they chorused, dissolving into laughter that echoed across the simulated battlefield. On the ground, Marcus had turned the landscape into a symphony of controlled chaos. Explosions erupted like deadly flowers, each detonation perfectly timed and strategically placed to create a chain reaction of destruction that was as beautiful as it was terrifying. "You call these defenses?" he shouted gleefully, rewiring an enemy communications array to broadcast nothing but Earth's greatest contribution to the galaxy: cat videos. "I've seen sandcastles with better structural integrity. Come on, give me a challenge. I haven't had this much fun since that little misunderstanding with the pyramids and the alien conspiracy theorists." But it was Riley who truly changed the course of the simulated war. Her fingers flew across the datapad, weaving through firewalls and security protocols like a master pianist composing a digital symphony of devastation. Lines of code poured from her fingertips, each keystroke another nail in the coffin of the enemy's digital infrastructure. "Oh, honey," she said, smirking at a particularly stubborn piece of alien software. "You really shouldn't have left your back door unlocked. Don't you know there are dangerous Terrans about?" With a final dramatic flourish, she hit enter. Across the simulated battlefield, enemy vehicles ground to a halt, weapon systems went offline, and holographic adversaries froze in place, some in rather compromising positions that would have made even the most open-minded xenobiologist blush. "And that, boys and girls," Riley announced with a theatrical bow, "is why you never underestimate a girl with a laptop and a grudge against bedtimes. Now, who's up for a little reprogramming? I'm thinking we turn this guerrilla warfare sim into the galaxy's biggest rave. Jackson, start working on that playlist." Back in the observation room, the alien generals were slack-jawed in disbelief as their most challenging scenario crumbled like a house of cards in a hurricane. Admiral Zorax's mandibles hung open, his compound eyes wide with a mix of horror and awe. "Impossible," he chittered. His exoskeleton drained of color in shock as Admiral Zorax struggled to process the scene unfolding before him. "It can't be done already," he exclaimed in disbelief. "It's only been 28 minutes and 37 seconds. A helpful AI voice cut through the tension. New record established. Previous record officially invalidated due to being, and I quote, utterly demolished, stomped on, set on fire, and launched into the nearest black hole. As the simulation dissolved, the 5 Terran cadets stood in the center of the chamber, looking as though they had just finished a light workout instead of dismantling a challenge designed to test the galaxy's elite for years. Jackson stretched, his joints popping with a satisfying crack, loud enough to make several alien observers flinch. "Well," he yawned, scratching his beard, "that was a decent warm-up, da. When does the real challenge begin? Maybe you have a simulation of Siberian winter? Or perhaps a typical Moscow traffic jam? Now that would truly test guerrilla tactics." Olivia and Emily were already in the middle of their cool-down stretches, their limbs contorting in ways that defied basic physics. "You know," Olivia mused, twisting her body into a shape that made several aliens avert their eyes, "I think I might have pulled something during that last flying kick." Emily, in an equally improbable position, nodded with exaggerated seriousness. "Yes, it was your sense of restraint. We should really work on that. Maybe next time we can try solving the scenario without even touching the ground, just to make it interesting." Meanwhile, Marcus was scribbling furiously in a small, worn notebook. "Note to self," he muttered, "recalibrate the yield on those plasma charges. Don't want to accidentally vaporize a real planet again." He looked up at the horrified expressions of the alien onlookers. "Oh, don't worry," he said with a reassuring smile, which somehow failed to reassure anyone. "It was just a minor mishap during a training exercise. The planet was mostly uninhabited. Mostly." Riley was already halfway out the door, datapad tucked under one arm. "Right then," she called over her shoulder. I've got a date with a pint of Guinness. Anyone care to join? First round's on the Admiral here, seeing as we just saved him about 5 years of simulation time. She paused, a mischievous grin spreading across her face. Oh, and Admiral, you might want to change your personal access codes. All of them. Immediately. Don't ask why, just trust me on this one. Admiral Zorax's mandibles moved soundlessly, his insectoid brain trying desperately to process the absurdity he had just witnessed. Finally, he managed to stammer, But how? This scenario was designed to be unwinnable. The brightest military minds in the galaxy spent decades crafting its intricacies. Jackson casually shrugged, nearly knocking over a delicate monitoring station. Perhaps your problem, he said with a nonchalant grin, is that you spend so much time thinking you forget to do. In Russia, we have a saying, why use a scalpel when a hammer will do? Your scenario was lovely, very intricate, but sometimes the simplest solution is the best one. Indeed, Olivia and Emily echoed in perfect unison, their voices ringing with the wisdom of generations. As our venerable ancestor SSU once said, the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. They both grinned mischievously, adding, Of course, he never mentioned anything about using a few well-placed roundhouse kicks to speed things up, or a strategically timed explosion or two, Marcus piped up, patting his pockets fondly. After all, nothing bonds people like a shared near-death experience. I find it really helps bypass all that tedious negotiation nonsense. Riley paused at the doorframe, her expression softening briefly, revealing a glimpse of the earnest cadet beneath her usual bravado. Look, she said, her Irish accent taking on a gentler lilt. We're not here to show you up or prove we're better than anyone else. We're here because we believe in what the Galactic Federation stands for, unity, progress, and sharing knowledge across species. She gestured to her teammates, a fond smile tugging at her lips. Each of us comes from a culture with a long history of conflict, of struggling against impossible odds. But we've learned, sometimes the hard way, that our greatest strength doesn't lie in fighting, but in adapting thinking outside the box, and, most importantly, working together. The room fell silent. Her words seemed to resonate deeply with both Terrans and aliens alike. For a fleeting moment, the barriers of species and culture seemed to vanish, replaced by a shared sense of purpose and possibility. Then, because the universe has a sense of humor, or perhaps because Terrans can never resist adding levity to a serious moment, Jackson's stomach growled loudly enough to sound like a spacecraft re-entering the atmosphere. What? He said defensively as all eyes turned to him. Toppling oppressive regimes works up an appetite, even in a simulation. Is no one else hungry? Maybe we could order pizza. I hear Zorathar makes an excellent tentacle supreme. Just like that, the tension evaporated. Laughter, Terran and alien alike, filled the chamber, bridging gaps that had seemed insurmountable just hours before. Admiral Zorax, his shock beginning to wear off, found himself chuckling despite his best efforts to maintain a stern facade. Well, he buzzed, his mandibles clicking in what might have been a reluctant sign of approval. It seems we may have underestimated you, Terrans. Oh, don't worry about it, Riley grinned, her earlier warmth now replaced with her usual mischievousness. We're quite used to it. Makes things more interesting that way. Just wait until you see what we can do with a real challenge. As the Terran cadets filed out of the chamber, already debating the merits of various Terran alcoholic beverages and their effects on interspecies diplomacy, the alien observers were left to contemplate the full implications of what they had just witnessed. Perhaps, a wizened Arcturian philosopher mused, his tentacles curled thoughtfully. We've been approaching warfare, and problem-solving in general, from an overly rigid perspective. Aurelian General nodded thoughtfully, contemplating this new approach. Her crystalline structure gleaming with newfound respect, the alien observer nodded slowly. Indeed, the Terran ability to improvise, to find unconventional solutions, is quite remarkable and I must admit, slightly terrifying. Slightly? Scoffed Gralloch, a heavily armed dealer, his multiple eyes blinking in rapid succession. It's downright terrifying. Do you realize what this means for the balance of power in the galaxy? If these 5 cadets can do this in a simulation, imagine what their entire species could achieve in a real conflict. Admiral Zorax raised a limb for silence, his compound eyes flickering with the weight of his thoughts. "What it means," he said slowly, "is that we have much to learn from our new allies. And perhaps," he added with a thoughtful pause, "perhaps they have much to learn from us as well." Just then, a distant explosion reverberated through the halls of the academy, followed by Jackson's loud, booming voice. "I found kitchen! Who wants to learn the secret of flammy Siberian style?" The aliens in the room exchanged nervous glances, their expressions a mixture of alarm, intrigue, and excitement. "Well," Admiral Zorax sighed, a mix of resignation and anticipation in his voice, "I suppose we'd better go see what our new cadets are up to. Something tells me the next few years are going to be interesting." With that, the Grand Assembly of the galaxy's most esteemed military minds adjourned, heading off to join their Terran counterparts in what promised to be a cultural exchange for the ages. As they filed out, a junior aide leaned in to whisper to his superior, "Sir, should I update the Academy's insurance policy to cover acts of Terran?" The superior, a battle-hardened veteran of countless campaigns, chuckled heartily. "My dear boy," he said, patting the aide on what passed for a shoulder, "I don't think there's an insurance policy in the universe that could cover what's coming. But oh, what a glorious time to be alive." As the day wore on, the initial shock of the Terran's stunning performance slowly gave way to curiosity and excitement among the alien staff and students. Word spread like wildfire through the academy, and soon the mess hall was teeming with beings from across the galaxy, all eager to catch a glimpse of the Death Worlders, who had turned the most grueling military simulation in the known universe into a mere 30-minute cakewalk. True to his word, Jackson had taken over the kitchen and was enthusiastically introducing his alien classmates to the wonders of Earth cuisine, or at least his very unique interpretation of it. "You see," he explained to a group of wide-eyed Andromedan cadets, his massive hands expertly maneuvering a frying pan that looked far too small in comparison, "the secret to good flam is not in the ingredients but in the spirit. You must cook with passion, with fire in your soul." To emphasize his point, he tipped the pan, sending a massive eruption of flames soaring toward the ceiling. Some of the alien onlookers ducked for cover, while others watched in horrified fascination. "Perfectly safe," Jackson assured them, as a small fire ignited on a nearby countertop. "Well, mostly safe. It's part of the experience, da. Now, who wants to try? I promise only a small chance of singed exoskeletons." Meanwhile, Olivia and Emily had gathered their own crowd, showcasing various Earth martial arts techniques. Their movements were a blur of precision and grace, leaving the alien audience spellbound. "The key," Olivia explained, flipping Emily effortlessly over her shoulder, "is to use your opponent's strength against them and to always be aware of your surroundings." Emily nodded in agreement, landing on his feet and sweeping Olivia's legs out from under her in one smooth motion. "For instance," they both said in perfect unison, just as a rogue fireball from Jackson's cooking demonstration sailed overhead, "sometimes the greatest threat isn't your opponent, but the crazy Russian with a flamethrower masquerading as a frying pan." Marcus, for his part, had set up shop in one of the Academy's engineering labs, surrounded by eager alien technicians. They watched in rapt attention as Marcus tinkered with what appeared to be a standard communication device. "Now, watch closely," Marcus said, his fingers dancing over the device's circuitry. "With just a few minor tweaks, we can turn this simple comm unit into a multi-spectrum scanner, a short-range MP generator, and, in a pinch, a rather effective hand warmer." He paused, a mischievous gleam in his eye. "Oh, and it makes a mean espresso, though I'm still working out a few kinks in that feature. The last test run may or may not have caused that small singularity in the quad. My bad, by the way." The alien engineers exchanged nervous glances, their faces torn between awe at Marcus's ingenuity and fear of what his modifications might unleash. And Riley? She had managed to track down the Academy's central computer core, much to the dismay of the IT department. Surrounded by holographic displays and haptic interfaces, she was in her element, her fingers flying across both physical and virtual keyboards. "You see," she explained to a group of Zygonian computer science students, their eyes swiveling rapidly to keep up with her swift movements, Your quantum encryption is top tier, really state-of-the-art. But there's a tiny vulnerability here in the subroutine that handles packet verification. It's so minuscule, really. Barely noticeable unless, of course, you're a sleep-deprived hacker with a caffeine addiction and a penchant for causing digital mayhem. With a flourish, she hit the final key, and suddenly every screen in the room erupted into a cascading waterfall of glowing green symbols. "I've completely rewritten your security architecture," Riley declared, her grin practically glowing with pride. "It should now be around, 50,000 times more secure. Give or take a factor of 10. She turned toward the stunned Zygonians, her expression a mixture of satisfaction and mischief. "And just so you know," she added with a twinkle in her eye, "I hope none of you had any big plans tonight because I may have accidentally scheduled a system-wide update that's going to take around 72 hours to finish. But hey, look on the bright side. By the time it's done, this place will be so secure, even I might struggle to break in." She emphasized might with a playful wink. As the day shifted to evening, the initial chaos gradually settled into an organized disarray. The Terran cadets, eccentric, unpredictable, and prone to unintentionally causing destruction, had somehow managed to win over many of their alien counterparts. Their enthusiasm was infectious, their eagerness to share knowledge commendable, and their ability to find humor in even the most tense situations was, well, uniquely Terran. Admiral Zorak stood in the entrance of the mess hall, taking in the scene before him with a mixture of resignation and reluctant admiration. Beside him, Lord Drakkar of the Drakthar Collective rumbled thoughtfully, his massive reptilian body shimmering under the soft glow of the Academy's artificial lighting. "You know," Lord Drakkar began, his voice low and resonant, "when I first heard that Terrans would be joining the Academy, I was skeptical. Their reputation as Deathworlders had already preceded them, and I feared they might be a disruptive influence." Admiral Zorax clicked his mandibles in agreement. "As did I, old friend. As did I." "And yet," Lord Drakkar continued, waving a clawed hand toward the mingling crowd of Terrans and aliens, "look at them now. In just one day, they've managed to challenge our most deeply held beliefs about warfare, push the boundaries of our technology, and somehow, against all odds, bring us closer together." Zorax nodded slowly, his compound eyes scanning the crowd. "It is not what I expected," he admitted, "but perhaps that is precisely the point. These Terrans, with their boundless energy and unconventional methods, are forcing us to see things from new perspectives, to question our assumptions, and to adapt." "Indeed," Lord Drakkar rumbled, "and in doing so, they might just make us all stronger." He paused for a moment, a toothy grin stretching across his reptilian features. "Although," he added, his voice filled with mild trepidation, "I shudder to think what they'll do to our carefully crafted curriculum. Something tells me we may need to rethink our teaching methods." As if on cue, another explosion rocked the building, followed by Jackson's thunderous laughter and a chorus of both alarmed and delighted alien voices. Admiral Zorax sighed, his antennae drooping slightly. "Well, my friend," he said, a note of dry amusement creeping into his voice, "I believe the Terrans have a special talent for situations like this. In for a penny, in for a pound. Shall we join them?" Lord Drakkar nodded, his massive form already moving toward the center of the chaos. "Indeed," he said, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "After all, if we can't beat them, we might as well join them." Zorax fell in step beside his old friend, a wry smile creeping across his face. "And who knows? We might even learn something in the process." As the two high-ranking officers entered the fray, the sounds of laughter, explosions, and what could only be described as an impromptu rendition of Bohemian Rhapsody echoed through the halls of the Galactic Federation's most prestigious military academy. A new chapter in interstellar relations had begun. While it promised to be filled with challenges, misunderstandings, and the occasional accidental planetary evacuation, it also held the potential for growth, unity, and stories that would be shared in bars across the galaxy for centuries to come. In the end, that's what Terrans brought to the cosmic table. Not just their strength, ingenuity, or adaptability, but their indomitable spirit, their ability to find humor in even the darkest of times, and their remarkable knack for turning even the most perilous situations into opportunities for growth, and more often than not, into an absolutely unforgettable party. As Riley would later quip, raising a glass of something that may have been radioactive, "To humanity, and to our alien mates, thanks for giving us a galaxy-sized playground. We promise to try not to break it, much." The cheer that followed was so loud, it reverberated through the surrounding systems, leaving several species wondering if they had just witnessed the birth of a new star. What they didn't know was that something far more powerful had begun, the dawn of a new era, where the unyielding Terran spirit would leave its mark on the cosmos in ways that no one, Terran or alien, could have predicted. And somewhere, in the vast expanse of the universe, it seemed that the cosmos itself chuckled. For it knew that with Terrans now taking their place on the galactic stage, things were about to get very, very interesting. As the impromptu celebration reached its peak in the mess hall, with aliens of every shape and size attempting to join in on Terran drinking songs, with varying degrees of success, a small group of senior academy staff huddled in a corner, discussing the implications of the day's events. "We absolutely must revise the entire curriculum," insisted Professor Valona Sharkai, her bioluminescent tentacles flickering with agitation. "These Terrans have shown us that our traditional approaches to strategy and tactics are woefully inadequate in the face of their chaos." "Creativity," corrected Dr. Iana Vexen, her feathered crest rising with excitement. "What we've witnessed today is revolutionary. The Terrans' ability to think laterally, to find solutions where we see only obstacles, it's breathtaking." "Terrifying," muttered Security Chief Zyralith, his exoskeleton vibrating nervously. "Do you realize the implications for galactic security? If 5 untrained Terran cadets can dismantle our most complex simulation in minutes, what could a coordinated Terran military effort accomplish?" The group fell silent, each lost in their thoughts, watching the scene unfold in front of them. Jackson's attempt to teach a group of gelatinous blobboids how to do the Russian squat dance was both hilarious and utterly surreal. The gelatinous creatures, massive and squishy, struggled to imitate Jackson's movements, wobbling and flopping in a manner that left the onlookers in fits of laughter. The sight was equal parts absurd and captivating. Finally, Admiral Zorax broke the silence, his voice carrying an undeniable weight that instantly commanded attention. "My friends," he began, his compound eyes sweeping over the assembled staff, "we stand at a pivotal moment. The arrival of Terrans in our midst presents both unprecedented challenges and extraordinary opportunities. Yes, their methods are unorthodox. Yes, their presence will undoubtedly lead to more than a few incidents." He winced slightly as another small explosion echoed from the direction of the kitchen. "But consider this. In a single day, these 5 Terrans have done more to challenge our established norms than centuries of gradual reforms." He gestured toward the scene where Olivia and Emily were leading an impromptu Tai Chi session, their alien students twisted and turned into impossible shapes, their movements defying both physics and logic. "To look at them," Zorax continued, his tone a mix of awe and disbelief, "in mere hours, they've fostered a spirit of collaboration and shared learning that we've struggled to cultivate for generations. Their enthusiasm, their eagerness to embrace the unknown, it's contagious." "The risk," Security Chief Zyralith began, only to be cut off by a sharp wave from the Admiral. "Are considerable," Zorax conceded, "but so are the potential rewards. We have grown complacent, entrenched in our ways. The Terrans, with their boundless adaptability and fresh perspective, offer us a chance to evolve, perhaps even become something greater than the sum of our parts." He turned to face his colleagues, his exoskeleton pulsing with colors that conveyed both resolve and excitement. "I propose that we not only accept the Terrans' presence here, but that we actively integrate their methodologies into our curriculum. Let's establish joint task forces, merging the best of Terran ingenuity with our own deep expertise together. We may forge a new path for the entire galaxy." The assembled staff exchanged glances, some filled with uncertainty, others with growing enthusiasm. Slowly, nods of agreement began to ripple through the group. "It won't be easy," Commander Vex warned, his cybernetic eye whirring as it processed the implications. "We'll have to completely overhaul our safety protocols, for one thing. And I shudder to think what the insurance premiums will look like." But think of the breakthroughs we could achieve, exclaimed Dr. Iana, her feathers quivering with excitement. The Terran approach to problem solving, paired with our advanced technology. Think of the possibilities. As the senior staff continued their intense discussion, mapping out plans for a future that now seemed both exhilarating and daunting, the celebration in the mess hall spiraled to new heights of controlled chaos. Riley, having completed her impromptu upgrade of the Academy's computer systems, turned her attention to what she referred to as the real challenge, teaching a group of silicon-based life forms how to river dance. The sight of the crystalline beings attempting to replicate the intricate footwork was mesmerizing and, admittedly, slightly terrifying. Each crystalline limb emitted a series of delicate chimes with every movement, creating an ethereal yet chaotic symphony. "That's it, lads!" Riley cheered, her feet a blur of motion as she danced in front of them. "You're getting it! Just remember, it's all in the ankles. Well, the crystalline equivalent of ankles, that is. Molecular lattice joints, perhaps?" Meanwhile, Marcus had set up an impromptu workshop, surrounded by a group of eager alien engineers. He was demonstrating what he called the fine art of percussive maintenance, which, to the horror and fascination of his audience, seemed to involve hitting complex machinery with increasing levels of force until it either worked perfectly or exploded spectacularly. "You see," he explained, dodging a spray of sparks from a particularly rebellious device, "sometimes the most elegant solution is also the simplest. Why waste hours diagnosing a problem when a well-placed hit can do the trick?" He paused, his eyes gleaming with mischief. Of course, knowing exactly where to hit and how hard is the real skill. It's part science, part art, and part sheer blind luck. The alien engineers, their expressions alternating between awe and terror, watched as Marcus raised a comically oversized mallet, a maniacal grin spreading across his face. "Now, who wants to try their hand at fixing the Academy's main reactor?" Jackson, meanwhile, had moved on from cooking lessons to what he claimed was an essential part of human culture: the art of the toast. Standing on top of a table, a glass of suspiciously blue liquid in one hand, he addressed a crowd of increasingly tipsy aliens. "Friends, comrades, beings of all tentacles and appendages," he bellowed, his voice carrying over the celebration. "We gather here today to celebrate great victories. Victory over boring simulations, victory over stuffy regulations, and most importantly, victory over sobriety." A cheer erupted from the crowd, an odd mixture of hoots, clicks, and what could have been whale song. "But let us not forget," Jackson continued, his expression shifting to seriousness, "that with great power comes great responsibility. And make no mistake, my friends, the power to party is the greatest power of all." He raised his glass high, the blue liquid sloshing dangerously close to the rim. "So I say to you, drink like there's no tomorrow, dance like nobody's watching, and if anyone asks, we'll blame it all on sunspots." The aliens, now fully caught up in the revelry, roared their approval, each raising their own glasses, or in some cases, prehensile appendages, in a jubilant toast. Olivia and Emily exchanged amused glances. "You know," Olivia mused, delicately sipping from a cup of what appeared to be glowing green tea, "when we signed up for this exchange program, I didn't quite expect this." Emily nodded sagely, balancing his own cup precariously on his head as he maintained a perfect handstand. "Indeed, sister. I believe the ancient texts refer to this situation as a rager. Though I must admit, I never imagined I'd see an Axian attempt to breakdance." The two watched, fascinated, as an Axian, known for their rigid, angular form, attempted to spin on its back in what could only be described as a disaster in the making. Jackson's attempt to teach a group of multi-med, gelatinous blob beings the Russian squat dance was as bizarre as it was entertaining. The blobs, with their shifting and wobbly forms, tried to mimic Jackson's rhythmic movements, leaving a trail of bioluminescent slime across the floor as they spun and flopped around in what could only be described as a spectacle of uncoordinated enthusiasm. Still, as Olivia observed with a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth, "You have to admire their enthusiasm. Perhaps there's something to be said for the Terran approach to interstellar diplomacy." "Ah, yes," Emily agreed, lowering himself back onto his feet without spilling a drop of his tea. The time-honored tradition of peace through partying, he added, a knowing smile on his face. As the night progressed, the celebration showed no signs of slowing down. Aliens who had never shared a meal, let alone danced together, were now arm in arm, or tentacle in pseudopod, swaying to the beat of Earth music that somehow managed to transcend the barriers of biology and culture. In a quiet corner, Admiral Zorax and Lord Drakkar stood side by side, watching the proceedings with a blend of resignation and amusement. "You know," Lord Drakkar rumbled, his scales shimmering with barely contained laughter, "I'm beginning to think we may have underestimated the Terran's most potent weapon." Zorax clicked his mandibles, curious. "Oh, and what might that be, old friend?" Lord Drakkar gestured toward the dance floor, where Riley was now leading a conga line of beings from across the galaxy, each trying to mimic her movements with varying levels of success. Their ability to turn any situation, no matter how dire or formal, into a reason to celebrate, to find joy and connection in the midst of chaos. Zorax nodded slowly, his compound eyes reflecting the swirling lights and moving bodies. "Perhaps you're right, old friend. Perhaps, in our pursuit of order and efficiency, we've forgotten the importance of what do the Terrans call it, letting loose." "Indeed," Lord Drakkar chuckled. "And who knows? Maybe this is exactly what the galaxy needs. A little chaos, a little laughter, and a reminder that, at the end of the day, we're all in this together." As if to underscore his point, a loud cheer erupted from the crowd. Jackson, somehow balancing on a pyramid of empty glasses, was attempting to lead the assembled aliens in a rendition of "We Are the Champions." The result was a cacophony of mismatched pitches, tempos, and in some cases entire dimensions of sound. Yet, oddly, it was beautiful. Watching species from across the cosmos come together in such joy, in off-key harmony, was something beyond words. Admiral Zorax felt something stir inside him, something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Hope. Hope for a future where the boundaries between species blurred, where the sum of galactic civilization could be greater than its parts. "You know," he said, turning to Lord Drakkar with a gleam in his compound eyes, "I have a feeling the next few years are going to be very interesting indeed." Lord Drakkar grinned, his reptilian teeth flashing. "Indeed, old friend. Indeed they will be." With that, the two high-ranking officers did something that would have been unthinkable just hours ago. They joined the conga line. Their dignified exteriors gave way to the universal joy of movement and music as they swayed to the rhythm of the moment. As the night stretched on, and the celebration showed no signs of abating, news of the Terrans' exploits began to spread far and wide. Across the galaxy, in smoky bars and glittering palaces, in bustling spaceports and on distant colony worlds, beings of all shapes and sizes gathered around communication devices, eager for any scraps of information about the Deathworlders who had turned the galaxy's most prestigious military academy upside down. On the desert world of Arrakis 7, a group of Freeman-like warriors gathered as a static-filled transmission described Jackson's culinary exploits. "They say he can start fires with his bare hands," one whispered reverently, "and that his food is so spicy it can melt through hull plating." In the crystal spires of Lumen Prime, a conclave of energy beings debated the implications of Riley's hacking prowess. "If she can rewrite our most advanced security protocols in minutes," one pulsed nervously, "what's to stop her from rewriting the very fabric of reality?" And in the deepest depths of the void oceans of Xenon 3, bioluminescent beings performed interpretive dances based on second-hand accounts of Olivia and Emily's martial arts demonstrations. Their movements, creating swirling patterns of light, would baffle xenologists for decades to come. Back at the Academy, as the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, the celebration slowly began to wind down. Beings of all species lay scattered across the mess hall in various states of consciousness, many in positions that defied both physics and common decency. Jackson, somehow still standing but swaying slightly, surveyed the scene with blurry-eyed pride. "You see," he slurred to no one in particular, "this is how you build interstellar cooperation, not with fancy treaties or trade agreements, but with good food, strong drink, and music loud enough to wake the dead." Riley, her hair a wild tangle of red curls, nodded sagely from her perch atop a snoring Thargoid. "Too right, mate. I think we've just revolutionized galactic diplomacy. Who needs stuffy negotiations when you can just throw a rager?" Olivia and Emily, still impeccably groomed despite the night's excesses, exchanged amused glances. "You know," Olivia mused, sipping delicately from a cup of what appeared to be glowing green tea, "when we signed up for this exchange program, I didn't quite expect this." Emily nodded, his own cup balanced precariously on his head as he maintained a perfect handstand. "Indeed, sister, I believe the ancient texts refer to this situation as a rager, though I must admit, I never imagined I'd see an Axian attempt to breakdance." The two watched, fascinated, as an Axian, known for their rigid, angular form, tried to spin on its back. The result was, well, not quite as graceful as intended. Marcus, emerging from beneath a pile of dismantled electronics, grinned widely. "Who cares what they envisioned?" he declared. "We've just made history. The first interspecies Balia in the history of the Academy, probably the galaxy." As the Terran cadets gathered together, surveying the aftermath of their impromptu cultural exchange, a slow clap echoed through the mess hall. They turned to see Admiral Zorax approaching, his exoskeleton glittering with what might have been pride, or possibly just residual glitter from the dance floor. Jackson's attempt to teach a group of gelatinous blobboids the Russian squat dance was as bizarre as it was entertaining. The blobs, with their amorphous, shifting forms, tried to mimic Jackson's rhythmic movements, leaving a trail of bioluminescent slime in their wake. It was a spectacle of uncoordinated chaos, and yet there was something undeniably captivating about it. Zorax's mandibles clicked in a way that conveyed amusement. "I must admit," he began, his compound eyes scanning the scene, "when I allowed Terrans to join our academy, I expected many things. Chaos, certainly, disruption, no doubt. But this," he waved a limb around, "I could never have anticipated." The Terrans exchanged wary glances. Were they about to be reprimanded, possibly even expelled? Were they about to face some form of alien justice? But Zorax stunned them all. Instead of anger, he let out a laugh, a strange, buzzing sound, somewhere between a chirp and a hum, yet unmistakably joyous. "In a single day," he continued, his compound eyes sparkling, "you've done what centuries of diplomatic efforts and cultural exchange programs have failed to accomplish. You've united beings from across the galaxy, breaking down the walls of biology and culture and reminding us of a simple truth we too often forget." He paused, his antenna twitching as he gathered his thoughts. "At our core, regardless of our origins, our species, or our form, we all crave connection, joy, and understanding. And sometimes, the best way to achieve that isn't through formal treaties or structured programs, but through shared experiences and authentic interactions." Zorax's gaze swept over the room, taking in the sight of alien species from 100 different worlds peacefully mingling, a scene that just days ago would have been inconceivable. "I believe," he said slowly, his voice filled with weight, "that we need to reconsider our approach to galactic diplomacy and perhaps even rethink our entire curriculum." The Terran cadets exchanged astonished looks. Was the Admiral really suggesting what they thought he was suggesting? Zorax's mandibles curled into what they had come to recognize as a smile. "Cadets Williams, Davis, Bennett, and Patterson," he announced with an air of finality, "I hereby appoint you as special advisors to the Academy Board. Your first task will be to help us redesign our programs to incorporate this uniquely Terran approach to interstellar relations." For a brief moment, the Terrans were left speechless. Then, Jackson, breaking the silence with a slow grin that spread across his bearded face, boomed, "Well, comrades," slapping Zorax on what passed for a shoulder, nearly knocking the Admiral over in the process. "I believe this calls for a celebration." A chorus of groans echoed from the forms scattered across the mess hall, but Riley couldn't help but laugh. "I think we might need to hold off on that one, big guy," she said with a grin. "But don't worry, something tells me we're going to have plenty to celebrate in the years ahead." As the first rays of sunlight began to spill through the windows of the Galactic Federation's most prestigious, and now, most lively, military academy, a new era was on the horizon. An era of unexpected alliances, boundaries pushed, and barriers broken. Laughter reverberated through the vast stretches of space. The Terrans had arrived on the galactic stage, bringing with them their unique brand of chaos, creativity, and camaraderie, and the universe would never be the same again. In the years that followed, the Terran incident, as it came to be called in official records, became the stuff of legend across the galaxy. Beings of all species gathered to recount the night when 5 Terran cadets turned the most prestigious military academy in known space into the greatest party in cosmic history. But more than that, it marked the start of a slow, yet significant transformation. The rigid, centuries-old structures and protocols that had governed galactic society for millennia began to give way to a more adaptive, flexible approach, one that valued creativity, spontaneity, and connection as much as order and efficiency. At the heart of it all were the 5 Terrans from Earth, forever remembered as the ones who taught the galaxy how to loosen up, think outside the box, and most importantly, how to dance like nobody's watching, even if you happen to be a gelatinous cube with 17 tentacles and no sense of rhythm. As for Admiral Zorax, rumors still circulate about a high-ranking Enoran official occasionally spotted in the more seedy corners of various spaceports, leading multi-species conga lines and proclaiming, in a suspiciously buzzing voice, that the real final frontier is the friends we make along the way. And so, dear reader, the next time you look up at the stars and wonder what's out there, remember this. In a universe of infinite possibilities, sometimes the most powerful force isn't advanced technology or military might, but the simple, irrepressible Terran spirit, with a healthy dose of chaos, a pinch of ingenuity, and a whole lot of heart. For in the end, that's what it means to be Terran. And, as the galaxy quickly discovered, that was a force to be reckoned with indeed.